Look, I know yesterday we made a video talking about Mike Babcock, and a whole bunch of the comments said things like, oh, stop giving this guy a platform, stop talking about Mike Babcock and all that, but I just wanted to make one more video about this man because this honestly is so intriguing to me, and last time we made a video about this kind of thing where it was really similar, it was about Jack Eichel and the Buffalo Sabres, and all that stuff that happened in 2015. That video did really well, and we had a whole bunch of conversation in the comments, and that signals to me that you, the viewers out there watching this video, actually do kind of appreciate the weird storytelling nature behind some of these instances in the NHL. And that's kind of why I'm making this video, because what we're talking about here is what Mike Babcock said on that long Sportsnet interview he did, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that one interview that's been published everywhere. They've been talking about it on the media, on Sportsnet, all over, and it's been promoted to the ends of the world and back by the Sportsnet crew. And I know a lot of people have been kind of soured away from that kind of idea, but you know what? I'm making this video just about one specific thing he said in that interview. And in order to go over and actually get the screenshots of what happened, let's go over onto NHLTradeTalk.com, because their article sums it up pretty nicely. Mike Babcock admits the Toronto Maple Leafs tanked in order to draft Auston Matthews. Now, this is really crazy, because last time we made this video, it was former Buffalo Sabres goaltender Matt Hackett talking about how Ted Nolan was really not coaching the team to the best of his ability because the Sabres in 2014-15 were desperately trying to lose to get Connor McDavid and or Jack Eichel. And now Jack Eichel is in a position where we all kind of know where he's at. We don't even know if he's going to be sticking around with the Buffalo Sabres long term. But for Babcock, this one is a little bit different, because it's not an American League goaltender who got called up who's making these comments. It's the legitimate bench boss himself, Mike Babcock. Now, this is the summary over here. The article talks about the entire Babcock interview, which has been a big deal, and I noted how it was a big deal. I like how they put it at the very beginning of the article as well. In an interview that will likely do as much harm as it does good for the former Leafs coach, Mike Babcock might have accidentally let it slip that the Leafs lost intentionally in an effort to finish last during the 2015-2016 season. Now, here is the quote. He said, "We went from making sure we finished last to get Auston Matthews. We built a program that was competitive, and we set the record for regular season points." However, that first part is the important part. We made sure we finished last to get Auston Matthews. Now, I get that a lot of people who hear that would be like, oh, duh, of course. Of course they were doing that. Were you seeing how the Leafs were playing back in 2015-16? Of course this team was in a position where they were trying to get worse. And, you know, I guess you might be right. It's funny because we can always kind of see teams that not really are tanking, where the players on the ice are playing worse intentionally because they want to lose, but the management, the coaching staff, and the people on top of the players setting up this team and putting them in a worse position to succeed. It's not like the Red Wings in 2019 were going out there and Dylan Larkin's trying to score in his own net because they want to lose. But at the end of the day, Steve Yzerman was building a team that everybody kind of knew wasn't really going to be all too great. If Steve Yzerman wanted to make his team a number one cup contending team, he would have traded 3 first-round picks for, I don't know, a top 6, 50-point, 30-goal guy in the NHL before the season began, and he would have traded away all the prospects they had for good defensemen. It's not like teams intentionally try to lose when they tank. It's mostly just the management puts them in a position that increases their odds of losing. But for Babcock, he's talking about it right here. He's saying, yeah, we made sure we finished last to get Matthews. And that's big. That's really big. First off, because, yeah, you never hear actual executives or personnel of NHL teams admitting to that. You can have that idea under the subtext all you want, and everybody can blatantly see that it's right there, but it's never official until somebody says it is. And that's kind of what Babcock does here. In fact, this article on NHLTradeTalk.com, I recommend you go ahead and read it because it actually is a pretty good read. I'll leave a link in the description. It says kind of the entire timeline as to how things went down in 2015-16. It's easy enough to put the pieces of that Leafs season together. The organization traded James Reimer and finished the season with Garrett Sparks after Mike Babcock ripped Jonathan Bernier for a bad game. By the way, do you remember that? I remember that very dearly. It was very big in the NHL news sphere when it did happen. From there, the team only won 2 of their last 9 games, basically splitting games between the 2 backstops. This was all after the Leafs came on strong in a season that had a .500 record for the month of March. When the season appeared out of reach, Toronto sold off Reimer and Kessel at the deadline for futures and managed only 1 overtime win in their last 6 games. So, again, that's kind of what I mean. It's not like the Leafs were going out there scoring on their own net because they tried to lose, but the people up top were saying, okay, let's trade away Reimer, let's trade away Kessel. These are moves that will make our team less likely to win and therefore more likely to lose. And if we lose more, hey, we have a higher chance at picking first overall. This is funny because in 2016, Auston Matthews was seen as this, saint. You know, Connor McDavid had this level of hype around him, and Auston Matthews, I want to say, kind of had that same mystique. Not the same level of potential, I would say. I do think that McDavid has always kind of established himself as that generational guy. Matthews hasn't really put himself in that tier yet. Why did I say yet? It's going to get a whole bunch of people mad in the comments, but Auston Matthews, may I remind you, was a few days away from being eligible for that 2015 draft. He was just barely born after the cutoff, and because of that, it's why he spent his draft year playing pro hockey in Switzerland. He didn't want to go over and play a year at the NTDP or at the college level. He wanted to get pro experience, which is why he played in Europe. And I remember a lot of people saying similar things about that draft in 2016 and about Auston Matthews specifically, saying things like, okay, if Matthews was born 2 weeks earlier, he probably would have gone 2nd overall in front of Jack Eichel and behind McDavid, because in the eyes of many hockey fans, scouts, and analysts back in that time frame, Matthews was that good. And even though you had Auston Matthews, who was this top guy, the 2nd overall spot at the beginning of the year anyways wasn't really all that clear-cut. Because I remember for the first part of the season, Jacob Chychrun being ranked as a top guy, and you had some other players in there as well. Patrik Laine, Jesse Puljujarvi, Olli Juolevi, these guys didn't make their name until the World Juniors, where, as underage players, they all collided together and absolutely dominated the entire field. Aho was there, Kapanen was there, you had some really good Finnish guys, but the top of the crop were those draft-eligible players in Juolevi, Laine, and Puljujarvi, and their stock just skyrocketed after that year's World Juniors. It got to a point where people were talking about Patrik Laine and looking at his elite shot and saying, darn, could this guy go first overall? Could this guy beat Auston Matthews in the projected first overall race? I don't know. And a lot of people were kind of debating it back and forth. Laine Matthews, Puljujarvi kind of somewhat interjecting in that conversation as well, because he was a big 6'3", 6'4" power forward who exhibited very good all-round mobility and scoring potential. Whereas Auston Matthews was just mostly defined as that number 1 franchise-defining center with a blistering shot, incredible skills, a big frame to boot, and the wheels to carry him forward. And eventually he did go first overall, because if it's Toronto, this is something that people will always talk about, that Matthews went to Toronto and then he scored 4 goals in his debut. May I remind you, Matthews made Team North America before even stepping a foot into the Leafs locker room, because he was already that gosh darn good that they played him with McDavid right away. And Team North America, if you remember the World Cup of Hockey, was very fun to watch. It's just really interesting to me now to hear 4 or 5 years later that Babcock's like, yep, we wanted to finish last because we wanted this guy. And may I show you the standings over here of the 2016 NHL season, 2015-2016 NHL season. Look at the last place teams in the league. They were barely last in that year because Edmonton was right behind them with 70 points. Look at this. Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, all these teams over here, you can kind of fill in the blanks as to where teams went in the draft that year. Winnipeg jumping up from, what is that, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth last to second in the lottery. Oh my gosh, that's incredible for them. They got Patrik Laine, which they turned into Pierre-Luc Dubois, who went one pick after. Interesting how that works. But yeah, I just thought it'd be really cool to talk about how the Toronto Maple Leafs legitimately were trying to finish last, and Mike Babcock pretty much admits that yeah, we were trying to tank for Matthews. Again, not because the players were intentionally trying to lose, but because the team on top was building a squad that would be more likely to lose. And 5 years later, hey, it's paying off because Matthews is going to be like a goal-a-game player this year, which is going to be absolutely nuts. So talk to me in the comments what you thought about this video idea here. I'll leave a link down in the description to all this stuff. The Babcock interview, I don't know if you're going to want to watch that, but that's going to be there if you want to see it. The article is also going to be there as well, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below what you think. So that, Troll is 99, and bye.